On Christmas Eve my daughter, my little girl, was left outside in the freezing cold, trembling, while her husband and his family laughed at her. For miscarriages, endless humiliation, and they said she was faking it. I couldn't stand by. I had to fight. This is what happened next. On Christmas Eve, I came home without warning. And there she was, my daughter, shivering outside in 32-degree weather. No blanket, no coat, nothing to protect her from the freezing air. Inside, my son-in-law's family was laughing, raising champagne glasses by the fireplace as if nothing in the world was wrong. I kicked the door open with my daughter in my arms and said 6 words. I'm glad you're here. If you're watching this, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're hearing my revenge story from. I want to see how far it reaches. I stepped out of the taxi, my heavy boots sinking into the deep snow outside my daughter's house in Boise, Idaho. The icy wind slapped my face so hard it felt like it was peeling my skin, and I pulled my coat collar tight. After years of coaching Taekwondo, I thought I could handle any kind of weather, from the blazing heat of the dojo to brutal winters. But this Christmas Eve cold made even me shiver. I stood in front of the warmly lit house, excitement and nerves twisting in my stomach. I wanted to surprise Emily. I wanted to see that bright smile she always had when her mom showed up unannounced. I hadn't seen her in months. The front yard was buried under untouched snow. No footprints. No sign anyone cared enough to clear it. Through the big picture window, warm light spilled out from the living room. Christmas music drifted into the night, Jingle Bells, Emily's favorite when she was little. I stepped closer to peek inside. A long table covered in a bright red cloth stretched across the room, loaded with holiday dishes, golden roasted turkey, steaming cornbread stuffing, cranberry salad with bits of apple and raisins, glasses of red wine gleaming under the lights. The Whitlock family, my son-in-law's people, were all there. Mr. Harold Whitlock sat like he owned the place. Mrs. Evelyn Whitlock held a glass of wine with that smug smile she always wore. Ryan's sister Abigail was there with her 2 kids, laughing non-stop. Everyone was toasting, laughing, enjoying the fire. But where was Emily? I frowned, searching every corner I could see. I imagined her inside, smiling, chatting like she used to, the way she'd hug me tight and tell me everything. Then I heard it. A soft, broken sound. A whimper, coming from the porch. I turned, and my heart just stopped. Under the dim porch light, beside a snow-covered poinsettia, Emily sat curled up in an old wooden chair. Just a thin blouse on. Her shoulders shaking violently. Her hair wet and sticking to her forehead. She looked so small, so fragile. I ran to her, panic tearing through me. Emily! I shouted, my voice cracking. I ripped off my coaching jacket and wrapped it around her. When my hands touched her arm, I froze. She was ice cold. Emily lifted her face. Her eyes were red, her lips pale. Mom, she whispered, so weak I almost didn't hear it, then she collapsed into me. I held her tight, her trembling body pressed against mine. I'm here, sweetheart. I'm here, I whispered, fighting the tears burning my eyes. I pulled an extra sweater from my bag and bundled her up, trying to share whatever warmth I had left. I lifted her gently, her soaked slippers dropping into the snow. I held her close, feeling her faint breath against my neck. All I wanted was to get her away, away from the cold, away from whatever cruelty had pushed her out here. But inside the house, the laughter kept going. Loud. Careless. Cruel. I heard Ryan's voice, smug, bragging about something, and the whole table burst into laughter. Glasses clinked. More toasts. More celebration. They were warm, full, and happy by the fireplace. While my daughter, my own flesh and blood, was freezing outside as if she didn't matter. Just a few hours earlier, I was at the Boise airport, still sweaty from coaching the national Taekwondo team. The heat from the mats still clung to me as I stood in the chilly airport lobby. I dragged my old suitcase behind me, too excited to stand still, imagining the way Emily's face would light up when I showed up unannounced on Christmas Eve. My heart raced. She'd always been my light, from the little girl who wrapped herself around my legs begging for one more bedtime story, to the young woman whose smile could melt the hardest days. But being head coach meant constant travel, Seattle, national tournaments, stolen moments with Emily. Each time I left, I whispered the same promise, just one more tournament, then I'll be with her. And now I was here, ready for a Christmas reunion I thought would make her happy. I sat in the waiting area, pulling out my phone to call her. Just to hear her voice, to be sure she was home. The phone rang and rang, each tone tightening something inside me. No answer. I frowned, telling myself she was probably busy helping the Whitlocks prepare Christmas dinner. I called again. And again. Still nothing. A small knot of unease spread through my chest, slow and dark like ink on paper. I sent a text. Mom's on her way. You home? I stared at the screen, waiting for the little check mark. Nothing. I shook off the bad feeling, trying to believe she'd set her phone down or was decorating the tree like she did every year. When the plane finally landed in Boise, it was already dark. I stepped outside with my suitcase, and the winter cold slammed into me, sinking straight into my bones. Families around me were laughing, hugging, heading off to midnight mass. A dad carried his little girl on his shoulders, her tiny hands clutching a candy cane as she giggled. Watching them tightened a lump in my throat. I used to carry Emily like that too, her hand in mine as we walked under Christmas lights. But tonight I was alone, dragging a heavy suitcase, stepping into the cold with a loneliness I couldn't explain. I flagged a taxi and rasped, Meadow Creek, 12th Street, my voice hoarse from exhaustion. Traffic crawled, the streets filled with people bundled in scarves and heavy coats, heading to church. I stared out the window at warm lights glowing from windows, church bells ringing faintly behind a choir singing Silent Night. I smiled softly, picturing Emily in the kitchen making mashed potatoes the way I taught her. At a red light, I spotted cops directing traffic. One of them I recognized immediately, Jake, one of my former Taekwondo students from the community center. He looked taller, stronger, proud in his uniform, but still had that same gentle smile. I rolled down the window. Jake. I called. His face lit up when he saw me. Miss Rose, you're back, he said, straightening his cap. I smiled, trying to hide my exhaustion. Yeah. Just finished training in Seattle. You still working in Boise? He nodded brightly. Yep. Traffic cop now. You here for Christmas with family? With Emily? My heart warmed at the sound of her name. But then Jake's smile faltered. His face changed, just for a second, but I saw it. A flicker of doubt. Worry. Something he wasn't saying. A spark of fear lit up in my chest. What's wrong, Jake? Something happen? I asked quietly. He shook his head quickly. No, it's nothing, Ms. Rose. Just glad you're back. But his eyes told a different story. Before I could press him, the light turned green. The taxi rolled forward, leaving Jake standing in the road, gripping his cap like he was holding back words. As we neared Emily's house, I asked the driver to stop a little before the gate. I wanted to surprise her, to see that beautiful shock on her face when she opened the door and saw me. I grabbed my suitcase and walked down the snow-covered path, my boots sinking deep. The golden glow from the surrounding houses flickered like candles. From a distance, I heard guitar music and singing drifting from Emily's living room. I smiled, imagining her singing the way she used to, standing beside me, belting out Winter Wonderland with that clear little voice. I left my suitcase on the step, took a deep breath, and lifted my hand to knock. But then, a mocking laugh sliced through the air. I froze. My hand hovered inches from the door. Mr. Harold Whitlock's deep, gruff voice boomed from inside. That's what they call a daughter-in-law? A woman who can't even have kids. 4 miscarriages. Haven't they embarrassed us enough? His laugh was thick, dripping with disgust. Then Ryan's voice, cold, cruel, cut through the room. Always faking depression. Locking herself in her room doing nothing. If it weren't for my parents, I'd have kicked her out ages ago. Another burst of laughter erupted, followed by the sharp clink of wine glasses. Then Abigail's voice, Ryan's sister, cut through the air, venom dripping from every syllable. Yeah, totally useless. A wife who can't have kids. What's she even good for? Pretending to be sick so people feel sorry for her. Pathetic. Each word felt like a knife to my chest. I stood frozen, my breath trapped in my throat. This is how they talked about my Emily, my daughter who dreamed of a warm family, who put love into every meal she cooked for her husband. This is how they repaid her. For miscarriages, each one ripping her apart, each one ending with her crying into the phone until she couldn't breathe. And now they said she was faking it. I clenched my fists so tight my nails dug into my palms. And then I saw her. Curled up on a wooden porch chair. Head bowed. Only a thin blouse on. Her whole body trembling in the freezing night air. My vision blurred with tears. My heart stopped. I ran to her and scooped her into my arms. Her body was still shaking, cold as ice. My own hands trembled, not from the Boise winter, but from the rage burning through me. Every step toward the Whitlock's door felt heavier than the last. But I didn't stop. I slammed my fist against the door, hard, drowning out the Christmas music blasting inside. Jingle bells looped over and over, mocking what I'd just witnessed. No one answered. I gritted my teeth and pounded again, harder, as if I could break the door down in a single blow. Finally, it swung open. Mrs. Evelyn stood there, a glass of red wine wobbling in her hand. Her lipstick bright and glossy under the lights, the smell of alcohol trailing off her. She forced a polite smile that didn't touch her eyes. "Well, Ms. Rose, what a surprise," she drawled, voice thick and fake. "Why didn't you tell us you were coming? We could have rolled out the red carpet." I locked eyes with her, letting my anger speak for me. "Let you know?" I growled, my voice low and shaking. "If I'd let you know, how would I have seen this? What did you do to my daughter?" I held Emily tighter, feeling her faint breaths against my shoulder. Each breath reminded me I couldn't let this slide. Evelyn lifted a brow, glancing at Emily like she was looking at a stain on the floor. "Emily just wanted some fresh air," she said, her tone sweet but soaked in contempt. "Don't make a big deal out of it. It's Christmas. Come inside. No need to stand out in the cold." Her words hit like a slap. Fresh air. While my child sat outside freezing in a thin blouse. Before I could respond, Ryan appeared behind her, shirt half unbuttoned, bottle of wine in hand, wearing a look of practiced arrogance. "Mom, close the door," he said, chin lifted high. "Let her stay out there until she gets over it. Who shows up to Christmas acting all fragile just to get out of helping?" He chuckled, mocking himself, thinking he was clever. Another knife. Not just for me. But for Emily, who shrank in my arms like she wished she could disappear. From the table, Abigail's voice rang out again, sharp, cruel, gleeful. "Exactly. A woman who can't even carry a baby to term, what's she worth? Completely useless." Her laugh sliced through the room, mixing with murmurs from the others. Suddenly, Abigail's two kids ran out to the porch, curious faces peeking around their mother. They stared at Emily in my arms, then giggled. "Aunt Emily's in trouble," one whispered, and they both laughed. Their innocent voices felt like salt rubbed into a bleeding wound. My face flushed, heat rising up my neck. I shoved my shoulder into the door and kicked it hard. The door flew open, slamming against the wall with a bang that silenced the whole house. Evelyn's wine splashed, dark red spilling onto the expensive rug. The Christmas music cut off suddenly, like someone yanked the plug. The air turned heavy, suffocating. I stepped into the living room, still holding Emily. Melted snow dripped from my boots onto the hardwood floor, each drop marking the path of my fury. Every pair of eyes was on me. Mr. Harold looked cold. Evelyn's fake smile vanished. Abigail glared with pure disdain. The others stared with annoyance or fear. I didn't care. I laid Emily gently on the couch and wrapped my scarf around her shoulders. Her hands were still icy, trembling, the cold clinging to her. I knelt beside her, meeting her eyes, trying to pour strength into her while inside I was nothing but fire. The Whitlocks' living room glowed warm, fireplace crackling, lights bright, but the atmosphere was thick, tense, ready to explode. Ryan stepped forward, face red from the wine, arrogance dripping off him. "You don't get to make a scene in my house, Rose," he said, stressing my house like he wanted to remind me I didn't belong there. He stood tall, hand on his hip, shirt half undone as if he was daring me to fight him. But in his eyes, I caught it. A flicker of doubt. He knew I wasn't someone who backed down. I shot to my feet, pointing straight at him, my voice trembling with fury. "No, Ryan," I snapped. "You don't get to pretend you're a man. You think you have the right to throw my daughter into the cold? To let her freeze? That's your idea of being a husband? Of being family?" My blood thundered in my ears. Every word tore out of me like fire. I glanced at the table, steaming plates, glowing wine glasses, mocking Emily's suffering. Mr. Harold rose from his seat slowly, adjusting his suit jacket. When he spoke, his voice boomed with authority. "That's enough, Ms. Rose. This is a family matter. A woman who can't bear children needs to learn to endure. That's just how it is." His words hit with the weight of a sledgehammer. I stared him down, seeing the arrogance of a man used to power, used to controlling everything. But today, he chose the wrong person to challenge. I looked at the table, at the feast they enjoyed while my daughter sat starving and freezing outside. Then my gaze fell on Emily, shivering, her stomach growling softly. My voice erupted, sharp and unforgiving. "So you feast while my daughter sits outside in 32-degree weather. No coat, no food. And you dare call that tradition? You dare call that humanity?" Evelyn shrugged, her smile icy. "A woman who can't have kids is a waste," she said softly, sipping her wine with a shrug, like she was discussing the weather. Abigail chimed in, her tone acidic. "Your daughter uses depression as an excuse to avoid work. Has she ever cooked a real meal for us? All she does is lie in bed complaining, dragging everyone down." She shook her head, eyes full of ridicule. Like Emily was nothing. Murmurs rose around the table, sharper and louder with every passing second. Some relatives shook their heads in judgment, others smirked as if Ryan's poison somehow made sense to them. Every whisper, every sideways glance felt like another knife in my chest. For a moment, I wanted to flip that polished table and demand justice right then and there. But then a faint sound drifted from the couch. Emily, my baby, stirred. She tried to push herself upright, her trembling fingers clinging to the cushion. "I'm so tired," she whispered, her voice cracking. "No one understands." Her words barely escaped before Ryan's anger exploded. "Enough," he barked. "Shut up. You've embarrassed me enough." He moved toward her, eyes cold and merciless, like he was ready to crush what little strength she had left. Emily's shoulders fell, tears filling her swollen eyes, and something inside me snapped. I stepped in front of her, ready to take on the whole room if I had to. Memories of her came crashing down, her quiet sobs over the phone, the night she cried herself numb after losing a child. The first miscarriage. Then the second. The third. The fourth. Each one shattered her dreams of the warm, happy home she'd always pictured. And through it all, I tried to comfort her from miles away, never imagining that the family she married into, the one I trusted, would become her tormentors. Ryan, the man I once believed was decent, now stood revealed, a cruel bully who tossed my daughter out into the winter cold like she was garbage. I was seconds away from exploding. Through the window, I saw Jake standing on the porch. Maybe he'd been making his rounds, but his clenched jaw told me he'd heard everything. I gave him a quick nod, "Don't step in yet." Just stay there. His presence was a lifeline. A witness. Proof I wasn't imagining any of this. Ryan took another step toward me, pointing in my face. The politeness he usually wore like a mask was gone. I'm warning you, this is my house, he said. Stay out of it, or things will get worse. He smirked, confident I'd fold under the Whitlock family name. He couldn't have been more wrong. My fists tightened until my knuckles cracked. The air felt hot, charged, like one spark could blow the whole place apart. I locked eyes with Ryan, my voice low and sharp. You think you can threaten me? Hurt my daughter and walk away? No, Ryan. That ends tonight. Then I turned to the entire Whitlock clan, Harold with his stone face, Evelyn with her smug smirk, Abigail with her cold disdain. All of you, I said, my voice echoing across the room, will answer for what you did to Emily. The living room fell silent, thick, suffocating, dangerous. I placed my hand on Emily's shoulder, feeling her fragile body beneath the scarf. This isn't a private issue anymore, I said, steady and clear. This is domestic abuse. My words hit the room like a stone tossed into still water, sending ripples through every corner. Evelyn let out a mocking laugh, swirling her wine as if this were entertainment. Abuse? She scoffed. We're just teaching her place, Rose. You should thank us for putting up with her this long. Then Ryan stepped forward, eyes bloodshot and furious. She fakes depression. Fakes pain. Nobody hits her. We're just tired of her doing nothing. He paused, giving me an ugly, twisted smile. Teach your daughter better, Rose. No one loses 4 pregnancies by accident. Maybe she wanted it. Those words didn't just cut, they ripped open wounds she'd spent years trying to heal. I heard Emily gasp, a tiny, broken sound, like all the air had been punched out of her. 4 pregnancies. For times she sobbed in my ear, begging for comfort I could barely give from miles away. And now Ryan dared to claim she'd done it on purpose. My hands trembled with rage. My nails dug into my palms until I felt the sting. He had crossed a line I could never forgive. I pulled out my phone. My voice was ice, even though my insides were a storm. I'm calling the police. I'm filing a report. And you're going to answer to the law. The wine bottle slipped from Ryan's hand and crashed onto the floor, red liquid spreading across the expensive rug. Fear flickered in his eyes, even if he tried to hide it. You wouldn't dare, he shouted, but his voice shook. Then Harold, who'd watched the whole thing with that cold, calculating stare, finally stepped forward, adjusting his tie as his deep voice rumbled through the room. You have no idea who you're challenging, Rose, Harold said, his voice low and icy. I've spent my life on the judge's bench. I've seen the worst people walk through my courtroom. You really think one phone call will make us panic? His gaze cut through the room like a blade, a reminder that the Whitlock family wasn't easily intimidated. But I didn't flinch. I'd seen my daughter left to freeze outside like she didn't matter. Nothing, not Harold's influence, not his reputation, was going to shut me up now. From the table, Abigail crossed her arms and smirked. Go on, call them, she mocked. Let's see who they believe, a crazy old lady or a respected family like us. Her laugh dripped with arrogance, confident that I'd lose. Emily tugged weakly at my sleeve. Mom, please don't, she whispered. I just want peace. Her red, frightened eyes broke me. I knew she feared things would get worse, more spite, more humiliation, more cruelty. But I also knew that if I backed down now, she would never escape this nightmare. I squeezed her hand, trying to pour strength into her trembling fingers. You don't have to be afraid, I said quietly but firmly. I'll protect you. I promise. I lifted her into my arms, snowflakes still clinging to her clothes like fragments of a life shattered. The Whitlock's hateful stares followed me as I carried her toward the door, their threats whispering behind me, but none of it mattered. All I cared about was getting her out, away from the cage they had trapped her in. Through the foggy glass, I saw Jake on the porch, one hand resting on his radio, eyes burning with a silent fury. He was ready, one word from me, and he'd step in. I gave him a small nod. He nodded back, gripping his radio like a promise, "I've got you." I walked out without looking back. Behind me, I heard Evelyn ordering the housekeeper to scrub the wine stain. Ryan slammed his hand on the table, cursing under his breath. Then Harold's deep voice echoed as he made a phone call, angry and urgent. Those sounds were arrows in my back, but I kept walking. I brought Emily to my small apartment near the National Training Center, simple, worn, and quiet, but safe. Safe was all that mattered. I carried her to the bedroom and laid her gently on the bed. Even wrapped in my thick coat, she still shivered. I dug out an old sweater, pulled it over her shoulders, then made a mug of hot cocoa, its warmth filling the cold air. "Drink this, sweetheart," I whispered as I set it in her hands. But she only stared at it, empty-eyed, as if she didn't believe she deserved even a drop of comfort. My phone rang, slicing through the silence. It was Jake. "Ms. Rose," he said, voice steady, "I filed the initial report. But the Whitlocks won't go down easy, you know their influence. I'm ready to testify if you need me." A small flame lit inside me. Jake, my former student, once a kid standing barefoot on the dojo mat, was now standing with me in this fight. "Help me prepare," I told him softly. "This may be a long battle." "I'm here, coach," he replied. "Whatever you need." The next morning, I took Emily to a therapist downtown. Dr. Linda Carter, gentle-eyed and warm, spoke to her, then turned to me with a heavy sigh. "She's suffering from severe depression, Miss Rose. 4 miscarriages and constant emotional abuse from her in-laws have shattered her confidence. She needs rest, treatment, and safety." Her words felt like another knife to the heart. I knew Emily wasn't okay, but hearing it said aloud made the reality hit even harder. I looked at my daughter curled in the chair, clutching her hands together, and guilt washed over me. I should have been here sooner. That afternoon, Jake stopped by dressed in plain clothes, carrying a bag of fruit and some old cookbooks. He set them gently in front of Emily. "I know you love cooking," he said softly. "Thought maybe, starting small might help. A pie, maybe. Or some chicken soup." He looked nervous, but hopeful. Emily lowered her head, gripping her blouse. "Thanks, but I don't think I can do anything anymore." Her broken whisper sliced through me. Jake's face tightened with worry, but he didn't push her. He just nodded, left the bag on the table, and turned to me. "Ms. Rose, whatever you need, just say it. I've got your back." That night, once Emily was asleep, I sat alone at the kitchen table, papers spread out in front of me. The apartment was silent, until a soft sound rustled near the door. A thick envelope slid under the crack. I picked it up, dread curling in my chest. Inside was a handwritten note, the letters rushed and messy. "Don't mess with the Whitlock family if you don't want to end up miserable like your daughter. Give up." My blood boiled. I crushed the note in my fist and hurled it into the trash, the sound snapping the stillness like a whip. Their warning didn't scare me. It fueled me. They thought I'd back down. They were wrong. That same night, I gathered every piece of proof showing the money I'd sent Emily over the years, bank receipts, messages filled with small notes of love, reminders that I'd always tried to support her. Even though Ryan and his family wasted most of it, every slip of paper was a memory. The moments Emily called me with a shaky voice, asking if she could buy something for the house, only for Ryan to tell her it wasn't necessary. I gripped my pen so hard it almost snapped. I'd trusted Ryan. I thought he'd protect my daughter. Instead, he used her, and when she wasn't useful anymore, he threw her aside without a shred of mercy. Emily woke in the middle of the night, stumbling out of her room, her legs trembling. She saw me buried in papers at the kitchen table, fear etched across my tired face. "Mom," she whispered, voice breaking, "I'm scared. I'm scared they're going to hurt you." Her red, swollen eyes made my heart twist painfully. I stood and wrapped my arms around her fragile body. "You don't have to be afraid," I told her firmly, even though fear coiled inside me like a tight knot. From now on, I'm the one who protects you. I promise. I helped her back to bed and stayed by her side until she drifted off. But sleep never came for me. I returned to the table, sorting through documents and scribbling a list of everything that needed to be done. I called an old lawyer friend who'd once helped with a Taekwondo-related case. He promised to look into it, but his warning was sharp. The Whitlocks have a lot of pull in Boise, Miss Rose. Court connections. It'll be a long fight. I nodded, even though he couldn't see it. I know, I said quietly. But I'm not stopping. The weeks of preparing the case felt endless, an exhausting blur of late nights under the dim apartment lamp. I went through every receipt, every medical report, every therapist's note. Those cold pages were proof of how deeply I loved my daughter, and a haunting reminder of how much suffering she'd endured. Finally, the first day of the trial arrived. Walking into the Boise courthouse felt like stepping onto a Taekwondo mat before a championship match. Emily and I entered together, the morning cold seeping through my coat. I held her trembling hand, feeling how icy her fingers were. Her eyes were red, dark circles shadowing her sleepless nights. She kept her head down, trying to hide from the stares around us. I stood tall for both of us. I'm here, I whispered, squeezing her hand. She nodded weakly, but her empty eyes told a different story, one of someone who'd already lost hope long ago. The Whitlocks were already seated. Ryan wore a sharp gray suit, carrying himself with the arrogance of a man who believed he'd already won. He adjusted his tie and gave us a smug, cutting glance. Beside him, Harold moved slowly but carried a gaze sharp enough to slice through steel. His faint smile said he knew the outcome before the judge even walked in. Evelyn and Abigail sat primly in their row, whispering and shooting us cold looks. Their hostility hung thick in the air, but I forced myself to stay steady. Today wasn't about me. It was about Emily. Jake sat in the spectator section, still in his police uniform. He gave me a small nod, reassuring, steady. A silent reminder that we weren't alone. I nodded back, grateful for the support he'd shown from that terrible Christmas Eve to this very moment. The trial began. My lawyer, Mr. James, stood and laid out the evidence piece by piece. He showed the bank transfers, proving I'd supported Emily for years, even though Ryan controlled every dollar. He presented the medical records, highlighting the therapist's notes on Emily's severe depression. For miscarriages, James said, voice thick with emotion. For losses. Combined with unrelenting insults from her husband's family, it left her emotionally broken. They treated her like a stranger in her own home. I looked at Emily, head bowed, hands clenched tightly together, as if holding herself together by sheer will. I wanted to stand and wrap her in my arms, but I stayed quiet and let the process unfold. Then the Whitlock's lawyer stood. And I felt injustice crawl into the room. One of them, wearing a sleek black suit, spoke with confidence that made my stomach twist. Emily's just faking illness for attention, he declared. The Whitlocks provided everything. Food, shelter, comfort. She simply failed to fulfill her duties as a wife. The word slapped me. Faking. Failed. My hands curled into fists. My blood pulsed in my ears. Then they called their witness, Mrs. Martha, the former housekeeper. She stepped up nervously, darting her eyes around. Mrs. Emily was lazy, she said. She locked herself in her room for hours. I had to do all the cooking and cleaning. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Emily, my daughter who poured her heart into every meal, who baked pies just to bring the family together, called lazy? I shot to my feet before I even realized it. You're lying. Emily was never like that. The judge, stern and unsmiling, slammed his gavel. Silence, he warned. This is a courtroom. I sank back down, my heart pounding, my jaw trembling, but my resolve unbroken. I sat back down, my heart pounding so hard it felt like I couldn't breathe. I glanced at Mr. Harold Whitlock. He was smiling, just a small, smug curl of his lips, and he gave the judge a subtle nod. An invisible thread seemed to run between them, and it sent a cold shiver down my spine. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. They had prepared for this day, and I was nothing but a piece in their rigged game. Emily stayed hunched forward, her trembling hands gripping the chair like she needed it to stay upright. From the corner of my eye, I saw Jake in the back row, jaw locked tight, fists balled like he was fighting the urge to stand up and shout. Mr. James kept going, his voice steady. "We'd like to present key evidence, a recording from Christmas Eve, capturing the Whitlock family's insults and psychological abuse toward Emily." He played the audio Jake had recorded that night in secret. Ryan's voice blasted into the room, cold, cruel. "She's just faking depression to avoid responsibility." Then Evelyn, sharp as a blade, "A woman who can't have kids is useless." Then Abigail's mocking tone, "She can't even manage to give birth." The courtroom went dead silent. Only a few shocked whispers cut through the air. I turned toward Emily. She seemed to shrink into herself, those words stabbing her all over again. But before the truth could settle, the Whitlock's lawyer shot up. "Objection. This recording is illegal and violates privacy laws." The judge didn't hesitate. "The recording is inadmissible." The floor felt like it dropped out from under me. I gripped my chair to keep myself from collapsing. The one piece of undeniable evidence, thrown out like it meant nothing. The room filled with murmurs, disbelief, confusion. I saw Jake lower his head, fists trembling. Emily buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking as she fought tears. I wanted to scream, to pound on the judge's bench, but I knew justice in that room wasn't ours. Mr. Harold sat there calm, arrogant, like he'd known the outcome from the beginning. I squeezed Emily's hand, trying to give her strength even though I had none left. After a long week of brutal trial days, the verdict finally arrived. I sat in the Boise courthouse clutching Emily's cold, trembling hand. Every night that week, back in my little apartment, my heart ached with helplessness. Emily sat beside me, her face pale, eyes red from crying, her spirit drained. Ryan walked in adjusting his tie like this was routine. Evelyn sat straight, lipstick bold, smile confident, too confident. Abigail looked us up and down with that same scorn. And behind them stood Harold, towering, eyes sharp, reminding me the Whitlocks always controlled the outcome. Jake was there too, still in uniform, eyes full of worry. He gave me a quiet nod, a promise that he had our backs. I gave him a grateful look, his presence was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. Then the judge entered, expression blank, voice cold. "The court grants the divorce request of the plaintiff, Emily Harper Larson, and the defendant, Ryan Whitlock." A spark of hope lit inside me. Emily's silent tears slid down her cheeks. I squeezed her hand gently. Freedom, that's what I wanted for her. But the judge wasn't done. However, the court does not recognize the claims of domestic abuse due to insufficient legal evidence. As for assets, since Ryan Whitlock contributed more financially, he is awarded the majority of shared property. The words slammed into me like a hammer. Insufficient evidence. No abuse. No justice. I thought of the Christmas Eve recording tossed aside, the medical reports twisted, the bank receipts used against us. And then it clicked. Harold, former judge, deep connections, had rigged it. I looked at him. He tilted his head slightly, still wearing that smug smile. It was all fixed. All of it. I couldn't stay silent. I shot to my feet, voice cracking with fury and heartbreak. This is unfair. This isn't justice. My voice echoed through the courtroom. Emily tugged my hand, panicked, but I couldn't stop. You heard what they did to her. You know what she endured. And you still dare say there was no abuse? You strip her of everything? A guard rushed toward me. Ma'am, sit down or you will be escorted out. I glared at him, then at the judge, his face stone cold, unmoved. I sank back into my chair, my hands shaking, my world falling apart. Ryan turned around slowly and flashed a mocking smile, adjusting his tie like he'd just won a championship. Evelyn and Abigail giggled under their breath, making sure I heard every bit of their joy. Their laughter felt like knives in my chest. Harold nodded, calm, as if this were just another case he bent to his will. I stared at them one by one, anger burning through me. They hadn't just taken Emily's justice. They had taken my faith, in people, in the system, in fairness itself. Emily covered her face, her body shaking, her muffled sobs slicing through me. I wanted to hold her, to tell her she'd be okay, but I couldn't even speak. Jake stood abruptly in the back, rage written all over him. His fists were clenched, arms trembling. I gave him a small gesture to stay calm, even though I wanted to scream and break everything in that room. The judge slammed the gavel. Order. The session is over. Everyone may leave. The gavel's crack echoed like a final blow, but for me, it was the beginning of a new kind of pain. People began to stand, voices murmuring, papers rustling. But I couldn't move. I held Emily tight, her trembling shoulders and quiet sobs tearing me apart. I wanted to tell her it would be okay, but my throat closed, words felt useless against this kind of pain. The unfair ruling didn't just take her assets. It took the last piece of my faith that this system would ever protect her. Ryan swaggered over, wearing victory like a suit. He leaned close to my ear and whispered, mocking, "See, Rose? I told you not to fight me. You're just a useless old woman." He smiled, crooked and triumphant, then walked off like we were nothing. His words poured gasoline on my rage. My blood surged, my veins throbbed, my fists clenched so tight it hurt. Years of taekwondo had taught me restraint, but in that moment, all of it slipped. I stepped forward, ready to swing, ready to give him back even a fraction of the pain he caused my daughter. But Jake jumped in front of me, fury blazing in his eyes, lips tight, fists trembling like he was seconds from exploding. I saw my own anger mirrored in him, a wildfire that couldn't be contained. The courtroom buzzed. Are they going to fight? A cop throwing punches in court? Phones came up. Camera flashes sliced through the tension. A journalist in the corner lifted his camera, hungry for scandal. Ryan turned around, startled for a second, then smirked. Go ahead. Hit me. I'll make sure you lose everything. Who do you think you are? Just a lowlife cop. He stepped closer, taunting, certain Jake wouldn't dare. Jake's chest heaved. His fist shook. His eyes were red from anger he could barely contain. Then Emily tore herself free from my arms, running to him. She clung to his arm, sobbing, voice cracked and desperate. No, please don't. I don't want you or Mom to become violent like him. I just want peace. I just want to live. Her cry cut through the entire room like a blade. Emily's tears streamed down her cheeks, her thin hands clutched Jake's arm like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Jake froze. His breathing slowed. The fire in his eyes dimmed. His fist slowly loosened and dropped to his side. Camera clicks echoed, flashes lighting up Emily clinging to Jake, Ryan standing there smirking. People watching, strangers, started crying. A woman wiped her eyes. A man shook his head in sorrow. Emily's pain had reached them. But the Whitlocks didn't flinch. Evelyn and Abigail whispered to each other, cold smiles untouched. Mr. Harold nodded, still in control, still confident that his strings held everything in place. The judge slammed his gavel. Order. If this continues, guards will clear the room. His voice snapped everyone back to reality. I wrapped my arms around Emily, holding her tightly. She cried into my shoulder, her whole body trembling like a frightened child. Jake stood beside us, head lowered, blaming himself for not doing more. I put a hand on his shoulder, letting him know I was grateful, more than he knew. Ryan adjusted his tie and walked out, every step screaming triumph. Evelyn and Abigail followed, their cold laughter another stab to my heart. The room emptied until it was just the three of us, me, Emily, and Jake, sharing the same bitter ache in our throats. Emily's breath hit my shoulder in small, broken exhalations. "Mom," she whispered, her voice shattered, "I don't want to fight anymore. I'm so tired. Can we just go home?" Her words shattered me. I wanted to tell her everything would be okay, that I'd keep fighting, but I couldn't force the lie out. I guided Emily out of the courtroom with Jake beside us, silent but steady. Boise's faint sunlight spilled through the windows, but it did nothing to warm my heart. Today wasn't just a loss. It felt like a declaration of war. The Whitlocks might have won in court, but I refused to let them win in Emily's life. I looked at her, her red, swollen eyes, and deep in them, the smallest spark. A flicker. And for that tiny flicker, I made myself a promise, I would not give up. In the days after the trial, Boise felt charged. Local news began buzzing. Bold headlines splashed across front pages. "Whitlock trial, justice bought." Reading it, my heart pounded. Someone finally said what we lived. On social media, the photo of Emily clinging to Jake spread like fire. Her red eyes, shaking hands, broken voice, it touched thousands. Comments poured in, furious and heartbroken. "The Whitlocks think money can bury the truth. Emily deserves justice. We stand with her." In our tiny apartment, reading those comments, I felt a sliver of comfort. The court turned its back, but the community didn't. And the Whitlocks felt it. Rumors spread about Mr. Harold using old connections to twist the verdict. Ryan, now dubbed the lawyer of injustice, faced constant criticism online. Their shiny reputation cracked like cheap glass. I didn't celebrate, but I felt something close to justice, not from the courtroom, but from people finally seeing the truth. Emily moved in with me. Our small home glowed with warm lamplight, family photos on every wall. Each morning I made her breakfast, pancakes with syrup, or scrambled eggs and toast. Emily would sit quietly, hands wrapped around a mug of hot tea, staring out the window. Some mornings, tears slipped down her cheeks. But she spoke a little more each day. Her eyes, once hollow, slowly began to show signs of life again. I didn't push. I just stayed by her side, a mother ready to shield her from any storm. Jake became part of our daily rhythm. He'd stop by with flowers or donuts from the corner bakery. Every visit brightened Emily a little, like he was a dose of medicine her heart needed. One afternoon, Jake, looking nervous, handed her a small box. Inside was a tiny keychain shaped like a taekwondo uniform, the same symbol I had once taught him and so many students. "You don't have to be strong right away," he said softly. "But you can start over, little by little. Just like Ms. Rose did." Emily held the keychain, her eyes shining with emotion. She pressed her lips together, fighting tears, then slowly nodded. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice small but full of feeling. I watched from a distance, silent, feeling a weight lift from my chest. For years, Emily had been belittled, called useless, made to feel like her worth depended on what she could give. And now, someone saw her true value, loved her not for what she could do, but for who she was. I turned away, wiping a tear from my cheek, not wanting her to see me vulnerable. One evening, the sunset bathed our apartment in gold. Emily sat across from Jake on the couch, head bowed, hands twisting the edge of her sweater, voice trembling. "Jake, I might never be able to have kids. If that disappoints you," she stopped, as if saying it would ruin everything. I was in the kitchen, pretending to wash dishes, but my heart froze, waiting for his reply. He smiled, steady and warm, taking her hands in his. "I don't need that, Emily. You're already my family." The words felt like a gust of warm air, melting the cold that had clung to her for years. My throat tightened, eyes blurring with tears. For so long, she had been humiliated, labeled a failure for what she couldn't give. And now, someone told her she was enough, she deserved love simply for being herself. I turned my face, letting tears fall silently, my heart overflowing with gratitude. Easter arrived, and I took Emily by the hand to stroll through Boise's main square, just like when she was a little girl, skipping down streets lit with festive lights. The square buzzed with laughter, the smell of freshly baked pies drifting from the food stalls. Emily wore a light sweater, her hair tied up, and for the first time in months, I saw her smile, a radiant, springtime smile. "Mom," she said softly, "I miss these days. I miss when you taught me to make apple pie. When you told me about your taekwondo matches." I squeezed her hand. "I miss them too, sweetheart. And I'll always be here to make more memories with you." We sat on a wooden bench, watching children play by the fountain, and a simple truth hit me: justice in courtrooms can be twisted, bought by power and money. But the justice of the heart, love, respect, resilience, no one can take that away. Emily, though she had lost so much, was finding herself again, day by day, step by step. And I, a mother who once felt powerless, realized my greatest strength wasn't in punches thrown in a ring, but in my love for my daughter. Jake appeared with a bag of warm churros, handing one to Emily. They laughed and chatted like old friends. I watched them, my heart swelling with hope. Emily might never forget the scars the Whitlocks left behind, but she was learning to move forward, to love herself, and to open her heart to those who truly valued her. And me, at 65, after fighting so many battles, I knew this was the most meaningful fight of all, fighting for Emily's happiness. This story is fictional but inspired by real experiences. Names and places have been changed to protect those involved. We share it not to judge, but to spark reflection on how many mothers suffer silently in their own homes. I'm genuinely curious, if you were in my shoes, what would you do? Would you stay silent for the sake of peace? Or would you dare to face it all to reclaim your voice? Every story is a candle that can light someone's path. I firmly believe courage leads to brighter days. At the end of the video, I've linked 2 of our channel's most loved stories. They'll surprise you, I promise. Thank you for staying until the end.